we demystify coaching platforms. I hope you're all excited for some demystification. And the thought behind this was that a lot of us have heard of these coaching platforms. Some of us have been using these coaching platforms, but for some of it, for some of us, they're still a mystery. And so I personally have really benefited from coaching platforms. And so I proposed to the GCA that we create this forum so that folks who are interested, who have heard about these things, who maybe have heard about them and don't like them, or who have heard about them and want to be part of them, that we could just have a conversation so that, that it is accessible to all, and that anyone who has been wondering about them has some questions answered. And so we've got 4 amazing panelists, and we've got 2 people, myself and Garry, who work as coaches on the platforms. And so we'll tell a bit more about that eventually in this call. And then we have 2 folks, James and Craig, who work for the platforms and who hire coaches and bring them on. And Craig is our newest panelist, so you might have not seen his name in the advertising for this, but we're really thrilled to have him. He's the manager of recruitment at Sounding Board. And so, yeah, between the 4 of us, there's a wealth of knowledge, and I believe that the demystification will happen easily and effortlessly. So to give you a sense of our structure, we have a very loose structure, or what feels loose to me as a Capricorn. But the structure is to introduce ourselves and what our relationship is with coaching platforms. And then we're going to help you define coaching platforms. Then we're going to talk about the benefits of working with platforms. We're going to talk about the potential challenges or things that people might not like about coaching platforms. Then we're going to talk to you about how to get on these coaching platforms for those of you interested in doing it. And then what are some tips to keep in mind when working with these platforms. And then we'll have a chance to get some additional questions if any have come up. But before we jump into it, if anyone wants to put specific questions that they have in mind into the chat, and then we'll see if we can cover them as we flow through this structure. So you know what we're up to. If there's anything specifically you want to hear about, feel free to put them in the chat or save them for the Q&A. So with that said, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves and our relationship with coaching platforms. Who wants to start? Want me to assign someone? Craig, how about you?
I'm happy to go. Yep. So I have spent most of my coaching career working for 2 platforms. Initially, a platform in Australia, Lever Transfer of Learning, that specialized in learning transfer coaching. And then I joined Sounding Board in the US around 3 years ago now. I went exclusive with Sounding Board back in October of last year, more on the recruitment side, but I also do some coaching on the side.
Awesome. Garry, why don't you jump in? Oh. Uh-oh.
Gary's gone.
He didn't like that idea. James, how about you?
Okay, sure. My professional name is James Lopata. It's just about my business card for so long, but people who know me call me Jim, so you can call me whatever. Yeah, so I am officially the Vice President of Coaching Supervision for AceUp. Oh, Gary's back. So, Garry, sorry, I got ahead of you. Many of you are familiar with coaching supervision because Damien's a part of the group, and many of you have experienced that. So AceUp is a contract gig for me. So it's probably about 50% of my work. And I do other coaching work and other things around coaching as well. But my relationship with AceUp started, I was told I was the 2nd coach on the platform. And that was, oh my gosh, 6-7 years ago now. The genesis of that was, actually, it goes back to a gay coaches conference that Damien was at. I think it may have been the first one that he was at before that. And I asked him about the future of coaching. And he said, well, the future of coaching is more and more organizations are going to be bringing coaching internally, or organizations are going to be hiring companies that bring in groups of coaches. I said, so well, what does that mean for the solopreneur? Which is what I was and what most of us were. He said, well, that's not going to go away, but it's definitely going to decrease. And so I began looking for opportunities to see what was going on. And one of the companies, and I ran into a bunch of them, because we know the reticular activation system, you find what you're looking for. And I met the CEO of AceUp at a Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce breakfast. And from there, we started a relationship. So that's my relationship. So basically, as a VP of Coaching Supervision, I do not recruit, I do not evaluate, and I'm not performance management. I've made it clear that no one reports to me. I am the coach's advocate. So I supervise supervisors. All of our coaches get supervision, the classic kind where we go into confidential spaces, and we use a systemic coaching approach. So I can get into that later, but the democratization of coaching, because it's more ubiquitous throughout companies, we really leverage that, particularly with coaching supervision. And I'm passionate about this and the work that we can do by leveraging one-on-one coaching for the benefit of large organizations. So that's where I'll leave it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. All right, jump in there, Gary.
All right. I'm really sorry, guys. I'm hot spotting on my husband's phone because our internet is down. And he went just 2 feet too far for a second, and I got dumped. But I'm here. So I've been a coach for 21 years, trained with Coaches Training Institute, Adler, Invite Change. I'm also a publisher of Choice, the magazine of professional coaching. From that aspect, this panel is really important to me. It's good to see you again, James. I'm glad you're back in the fold here, so to speak. And I look forward to hearing from both of you guys. As Will said earlier, I am a coach with Better Up. I'm also a solopreneur. And hey, my life revolves around coaching. I just love it, love it, love it. People ask me, a lot of my friends and family, they say, well, you're going to retire. And I'm like, retire from what? I'm not working, I'm coaching. Okay, so that's it.
Awesome, thanks, Gary. And briefly, I'll describe, I am a coach trained by Goldvarg, been coaching for a little over 4 years. And similar to James, my origin of my connection to coaching platforms is through the GCA. So it was Terry Hildebrand who taught me about coaching platforms and had me on some listserv where there were a bunch of links for different platforms, and I was able to connect with Better Up. And it was a really important part of my process to become a full-time coach, and continues to be a really valuable part of my coaching practice, my coaching career. So I coach on Better Up. I've coached on Modern Health. I know Brian Gorman is connected to that platform as well, joined Modern Health. And I'm looking forward to potentially coaching with AceUp eventually. And I also have a private practice called Willfully Living. So I hold both of those things as important ways to keep my coaching career moving forward in a good way. Great. So I'm sure we'll get deeper into some of these personal stories, but for now, some people might be on this call asking, what the hell are these coaching platforms? So let's just give some definitions. And I thought I'd turn to Craig and James for those, because I imagine you guys do that when you're, talking to, I don't know, investors or telling people what you do. So go for it, either of you.
So for me, a coaching platform basically enables an organization to secure multiple coaches without needing to contract individually, which was, I guess, really the model that happened before coaching platforms were created. I guess the other thing to say around sort of coaching platforms is that they're not all the same. There are more and more platforms, it seems, by the day, and everyone has their own focus. Some are more broad in terms of their orientation. Others are much narrower. I would include Sounding Board in that, who are very specifically focused around leadership coaching. So I think what I would maybe start by saying is that not all coaching platforms are the same. So be really clear on what you are looking for and how it's going to support you and your practice, and what role you want it to play.
Great. And I'll just build on that because it's very similar. I think one of the things that's important to realize is that we call them coach platforms and not coaching companies. The company, the platforms, these platforms are technology companies. They're considered technology companies. Investors are tech investors. They are not innovating coaching per se. I mean, that said, as we deliver coaching, we're adapting and changing, but their innovation is the delivery of coaching. It's allowing more transparency and availability of coaching throughout organizations at cheaper price points and higher scalability. And consistency and quality. So HR departments used to have to, file through these solopreneurs and figure out who, and then their C-suite wanted so-and-so, and they were managing all this very, unique different things. And just like Craig said, it just allows for a more consistency, allows companies, HR wants this off their plates, and so the technology allows them to see who's being coached, without violating any confidentiality. You can begin to provide coaching that's easy for employees to access, and they get to see, they know that it's managed well. From the coach perspective, what the platform does is it allows us, in a lot of ways, to do what we love most. One of the things that I'm working actually on a startup myself, in the coaching industry, and it's more about helping early stage coaches get going. And because one of the issues with early stage coaches, as we know, is you get your certification and they say, great, go coach. And you're like, I want to quit my day job. And I'm like, how do I do that? One of the things, and so coaches, what we know is that most of us aren't business people. So we didn't know how to start businesses. And so the coaching platform takes over a lot of that business stuff. So they match you with clients, they do the invoicing, etc. So part of what I'm trying to do, both with my position at AceUp and with this idea that I'm working on as part of a startup cohort, is to help coaches connect with places that allow them to do their coaching, to focus on that rather than the business aspects, or to help them focus on only the parts of their business that they need to focus on, so that we can live in our genius. And I think that's one of the things that platforms do for coaches. But let me be clear, the platforms themselves, their client is the organizations, and that becomes a sticking point for some coaches. And as Craig said, these different platforms approach coaching differently. They have their unique aspects. I mean, I love that you say sounding board is about leadership development. We say that too, but there's different nuances within that as well. So as you look around, there's probably 40, 50, I don't know, many of these. Ask around, and I'm here to help you navigate as well. I'm sure Craig is happy to as well.
Absolutely.
Now this just, to me, okay, so Mr. Capricorn's happy with Lucy stuff. I want some details. Do either you guys have, or do we know someplace where we can get something for our community that says, okay, these are the platforms, these are the types, here's how to get started? Or is that out there somewhere? Maybe we could think about that as an outcome of today's call.
Yeah, we
happy
can
to contribute to that for each of the.
Yeah, even if it's just to get from you guys what you know, maybe we could collaborate to get that, because I'm sitting here going, okay, James, you're doing that, and we've got these platforms, so why can't we help every coach in this call start having more clients like tomorrow?
Yeah, that's actually good. I mean, that's part of the issue, as Craig knows probably from the startup area, is that you pivot back and forth too. But we can do that. I mean, one of the things that and to give an example, so AceUp, BetterUp is the most well known, right? They're capitalized now at what, $7 billion or something like that. Yep. So Garry's with BetterUp. BetterUp places themselves. So I'm in a lot of, actually, the other thing I do at AceUp is I'm in a lot of sales conversations with HR leaders. I do a lot of their coaching culture webinars, which is one of our greatest leads. So I'm a thought leader in there as well. So one of the things that I know is BetterUp places themselves more as a whole person coaching.
Mhm.
And when I'm in sales conversations with people who are looking at BetterUp, like, what's half person coaching? Like, you know, in leadership development, you know, we do the whole person too, but we do it from a leadership perspective. So I don't know what they're talking about, but that's my own
Ooh.
little, cagey approach. What was I going to say? Oh, so we tend to, so BetterUp often sells large coaching engagements more as an employee benefit. So classic, what I call boutique coaching for a long time was C-suite, you know, a $60,000 contract for a CEO, and they worked on certain things, and it was high touch. With a lot of engagement, even some of the engagements we do with AceUp, even though we take more of a systemic approach, we do a little more hands-on. We tend to place ourselves higher in the hierarchy, so just below C-suite, and kind of around new manager, but experienced manager, that area. BetterUp often sells like huge coaching engagements where coaching is just an employee benefit. Like their managers don't even sometimes track what's going on. And it's just millennials want it, and they know that it helps them, and they put it in their, you know, university or what have you. Now I lost track of where I was going. Craig, you probably have more to add to this. Go ahead.
So I think in relation to what you were sharing, James, I think the thing here is this is an evolving field. It's changing rapidly. So as with any startup, what was even 6 months ago feels hopelessly out of date now. What that means is that as a coach, sort of organizing through one of these organizations, there is going to be change, and you need to feel comfortable with that sort of evolution in not just their phase of growth, but also how they organize themselves, and sometimes even a shift of focus. So I think that nimbleness is one thing that I would point to. I think the other thing that for me is important is the reason that most people are on platforms is that it provides that base level of income and that stability. So the way I tend to look at platforms is that it's your passive income stream. All of our coaches, almost without exception, have their own practice, but what Sounding Board provides them is the income to pay the bills, so that in their own practice, the pressure's off and they can go and do what they really want to do, and they can invest their time and energy in that. A bit like you said, James, the reason ultimately I've spent most of my coaching career on platforms is because I wanted to spend my time coaching, not marketing. Now, not everybody is the same, and some people really love that branding piece and are very good at it. I wasn't. I wasted 2 or 3 years at the beginning, spending a huge amount of energy and time for very little return. And so I think it's just worth sort of saying here that it is, to an extent, horses for courses. They're not going to suit everybody. It does require some compromises from you, because you don't get to coach, certainly not at Sounding Board, in your own way that you would in your own practice. There are certain brand standards that we try and keep our coaches sort of adhering to build that consistency. But I think it can be a really, for anyone wanting to make that transition to full-time coaching, I think for me, it's an integral part of that mix.
Perfect. Yeah, Craig, that's a brilliant segue into the next topic, which is the benefits of coaching on these platforms. And yeah, I'll just share personally, what was so helpful was when I was able to get on the platform, right? There was a process to become one of the BetterUp coaches. There was a process of creating a video, and then filling out some application forms, and then learning about a particular methodology or structure, and then doing that with a sample client. It was someone, an actor, I suppose, who was doing a coaching session with me to assess me. And then once I was able to move through all those hurdles, I became one of their coaches, which meant that they would have me in the roster. And when people who were contracted to them, who had coaching benefits, wanted a coach, they would be given potentially me and 2 other coaches to choose from. So this is how BetterUp works. So the client, who maybe is, let's say, a manager at Facebook, has this benefit because Facebook contracted with BetterUp. Then they take advantage of it and they're assigned 3 potential coaches. They look at our profiles and they choose the one that is most aligned with them. And then I start working with them. And what was super helpful for me was that I not only was able to suddenly pay the bills, because I was struggling, that first couple of years, that first year and a half to get the coaching clients, but I also was able to get the experience that I really needed at that time. I remember when I first stepped into the coaching world, I would get onto my Zoom calls and I would have this trepidation, like, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to serve them? Am I going to be able to make the impact that I have to make, I need to make? And because of the amount of clients that I had with BetterUp, I just stopped thinking about it because I was just moving through clients, and of course I cared, but I didn't have that fear every time I stepped into a new coaching session. And so for me, the experience was really key for me to have, especially in the beginning of my career. And the other piece that was really helpful was to be able to coach people that I never expected to coach. I had some limiting beliefs about my capacity to coach high-level executives, and I was an executive, but I was an executive with nonprofits. And so I thought, I'll never have anything of value to bring to, some corporate leader. And then I would be in these coaching sessions and have these high achievers reflect back the value that they were receiving from me. And I was like, damn, okay, I can do this. And so, yes, it really has increased my confidence as a coach in a big way. Any other thoughts on some of the benefits? So yeah, certainly the income stream, the not having to market, to be able to just receive coaches. What else, guys?
I've got a couple more, which I think are really important. Coaching can be a bit of a lonely road. I mean, the GCA is a wonderful example of where people belong, but that's definitely a key part of what we aim for at Sounding Board. Is we want to be a community, and we're a very vibrant, active community where the coaches are incredibly generous. Often people will post challenging client cases and they get a lot of response from coaches with ideas, resources, things that they can try out. So it feels for me a bit like a home, somewhere to belong. And I think the second thing is, because obviously their network is coaches, we provide a lot of free learning opportunities. Our interest is in continually up-leveling the standards and the quality of our coaching, bringing in new trends, themes that were emerging from our clientele. And so there's a great deal of sort of support available as well. So I think it's a fantastic place, particularly for coaches earlier in their journey, really to have that sort of supportive, nurturing environment that I know if I could turn the clock back 7 years, I'd really have appreciated.
Yeah, I really appreciate the community. Yeah, go ahead, James.
Yeah, I can share. I think and I've seen about this before the call, I think there are 5 key benefits that I would articulate. But before I do that, there was a question about, are there coaching platforms that don't reach out to large organizations? I think that was Scott and Jason asked about that in chat. Just to comment on that, yes. So Craig and I are working for organizations, and there's many of them out there like BetterUp that are mostly, they market to large organizations. They're selling coaching to companies. But there are other platforms out there. They're known more as marketplaces to match coaches with those looking for coaching. So they could be life coaching, they could, and there's a number of other platforms out there like that. I mean, there are the work, we're flooded with them. It's in business terms, it's a red ocean. There's blood all over the place. People, I mean, but the fact is that the coaching industry is growing 4 to 5% every year. So these are, and it's expected to for the next 5 to 10 years. Even during COVID, it remained sort of flat. So there's a lot of different opportunities out there. And like Garry said, it would be helpful. And this is one of the things that I want to do with early stage coaches. So this is actually a really useful exercise, Garry, is to come up with a list of these. Because I have coaches reach out to me all the time, and they want to work for AceUp. And I'm like, you know, we in particular, it's interesting, Craig was talking about a brand or model. We don't necessarily have a real brand or model at AceUp, because one of the things that we did from the start was we really hired very high-end coaches. Like a lot of our coaches are PhDs. We started at Harvard. We got Harvard Business School. So a lot of our coaching approach is dynamic, and it's based on coaches have to have a lot of experience and real testimonials from major clients, and then we get them in supervision, and we are beginning to forge a kind of collective coaching approach, which is based on a community, a systemic approach, which is really what I'm driving throughout there. So it's a different approach, and that's what I would say to Craig's point, and also to Garry's. It's like, look around and see what's helpful. So the 5 benefits, and that's the 5th one, I'll come back to that. But one of the first benefits, particularly for early stage coaches, is you start to get your hours, right? So BetterUp is a great place. And one of the things, AceUp, we pay our coaches a lot more than BetterUp and most other platforms out there, but we also tend to place ourselves higher in the marketplace. So there are coaching companies where you can get your hours and you can, like Will said, just turn it around, and that's great. So you don't have to think about it. Experience. That's one benefit. Second benefit is, this was talked about, no marketing, no invoicing. You don't have to deal with the business stuff. Third benefit, Craig mentioned this, and we find this with our coaches, is it gives them a baseline of clients, and then they go out and do their other stuff. So you feel like you've got some sort of comfort level with that. The fourth big benefit Craig talked about is community, the community aspects and the networking. Yes, AceUp, ACEUP, UP, sorry. And then the 5th benefit is, and this is where you want to look around, is what type of methods or models or approach do they have? Because that can determine kind of your career path going forward. One of the things that we know, and David Peterson, former head of coaching from Google, says this. He says, we know coaching works. Just about any coaching intervention is better than none. What we don't know now, and this is the next frontier, and this is why Craig says we're always moving and changing. We don't know which type of interventions, with which type of coaches, which assessments, at which point, which people are best to include. And I'm doing a lot of research on this. I'm going to have a chapter coming out in a Routledge book about some of these ideas. I'm in another study about that. That's the next tier. So you want to go into these platforms thinking, this is interesting, I'm going to learn, and be adaptable, really be adaptable. Craig can probably speak to this. Coaches that you get stuck in one mindset, they don't last long on the platform, right? Because they got to be part
Absolutely.
of the community, and we got to be growing.
Absolutely. And one other thing that I would just maybe add is, maybe it's due to my role, but I'm really conscious of coaches who are independent, low maintenance, you might call it, and those that are high maintenance. And to be honest, you're not going to succeed on a platform if you need a lot of that high touch activity, because there just isn't the resource to support that. So actually what we're looking for often is individuals who can absorb what they're seeing around them, who can integrate that, who can bring it in their own way, and who can fly. And the other thing I would add to that is, it's really interesting that we deliberately match our coaches with coaches who are different to them. They're not 100% opposite, but there's enough of a gap that it provides learning to both the coachee and the coach. So there's some style flexibility here that's really important. To really succeed, you need to have some flexibility around when you work, you need to have some flexibility around who you work with, and you need to have some flexibility in terms of how you flex your style to meet those different types of coachees. The coachees who really soar at Sounding Board are those that have that ability to adapt. Those that are very rigid, it doesn't work, and they don't get the same success rate. They don't get the same volume of clients, so it's not as beneficial for them.
That's so cool, Craig. I wasn't aware of that. I've never really gotten an insight into the algorithm for how the matches work, but that makes a lot of sense. And I just thought of another benefit, which is as a coach, you get to design it in the way that you want. So you can determine how, or at least with BetterUp, you get to determine how many clients you're going to take on. And for me, that has shifted, right? At one point, I was like, good for 25. And then I was like, okay, now I don't have any time for my private practice. And so I scaled it down to 5. And then, my private practice was a little quiet. So let's raise it up. And so you can really play with capacity and do whatever fits your schedule and your lifestyle. And then the other piece is scheduling. Similarly, you get to choose, how many hours you have available and what those hours are. And then the clients, work within that.
Can I just pick up one point you said there, Will, which I think is it's a key thing to look at when you're evaluating different platforms. What a lot of platforms do is they recruit a ton of coaches and then they go and look for the business to try and fill them up. What that can mean is a lot of coaches who are relatively underutilized, who have 4 different platforms that they're operating on. There's 3 or 4 different ways of doing their business and doing their invoicing and doing their systems. And that's not optimal. So what we do at Sounding Board is very different. What we ask our coaches to commit to is a minimum of 12 coachees. That looks like roughly on a monthly basis, 25 to 30 hours we're all in. But what we find is that for Sounding Board, for us to maintain our quality, which is really important to us and our brand, that's enough share of mind that coaches then do their best coaching with us because they're familiar with the platform, they're familiar with the Sounding Board way, they know the leadership capabilities, and it's coming easy rather than every time they log in, it feeling like an effort. So just be aware that it's, again, back to that point earlier, there are different styles. And some of the questions I'd be asking is about how they treat you as a coach, how they remunerate you as a coach, and how they develop you as a coach.
Thank you for that. How about with AceUp, James? Is it similar to BetterUp's model of you get to pick and choose your capacity and your schedule, or is it more similar?
Yes and no, but it's actually more like Craig. We went through that phase where we had so many coaches and we couldn't get them business, and it was, and we pivoted a while ago toward very much what Craig is talking about. We privilege the coaches that do well. I mean, we start slow with them, so they go through an extensive vetting process. We want people with corporate experience, at least 5 years of good corporate experience, as well as their certifications. They need to have solid testimonials, and they need to be collaborative, and they can't be too tech needy. These are big things if you're trying to scale a startup. And so we don't necessarily, we've tried out different ideas about how many coaches or coaching hours people can commit to, but we've been building that a little more organically. And then you'll get matched to a few. If you're not completing a match, we give you, we'll follow up with you, because what we know, sometimes people don't do good matching calls who can be great coaches. So we try to develop the coach and see. And then once you get clients, we have regular evaluation systems, et cetera. And then we track the coach. And if they start to do well, they get more business. If you're not, we just kind of part ways, because we are very focused on quality. It sounds like Sounding Board is very similar in a lot of aspects to what we do at AceUp. So
cool. Yeah, and one of the things that was exciting for me was when well, first of all, I believe with a lot of these platforms, an ICF credential is required. I don't know if that's true for AceUp and Sounding Board, but I know for BetterUp. And but at BetterUp, I started at a certain pay rate, and then when I became PCC, in large part because I got so many hours coaching with BetterUp, I was able to update that, and then my pay rate increased as well. So that's another cool little benefit. So that's a lot of benefits. And now let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges, which I believe, we've come up with a couple already. And I see in the chat, one of the things that folks have talked about is pay rate, which they really do vary drastically between the platforms. And there are some that, yeah, it makes you question if it's actually worth it. And then some where it feels really, really valuable. So that's certainly one of them. Can you guys speak to any other particular challenges or downsides to the real emergence of these platforms, in some ways taking over the industry?
Do you want to go first, James?
Sure, yeah, and then you can piggyback on me. It's great meeting you, Craig, too. We should connect offline. Yeah, I think it's a lot of what Craig was saying before, to kind of know what you want, look around. The fact is that 10 years from now, most of these coaching companies are not going to be around, or they're going to be absorbed by others. It's any shift or disruption in the coaching, in any industry. It's flooded like the movie industry at the early 1900s. There were tons of studios, and now there's like 5. Or car companies, there were names that we never heard of anymore, hundreds of them, because that's how disruption happens. So the coaching industry is at a major crossroads, and that's another thing that I would encourage you to do. And in fact, if any of you are starting out or whatever, I need to have conversations with coaches like you. I'm still in the discovery phase. If we launch anything, it won't be till the fall. So reach out to me, and I'm happy to provide you some ideas about platforms that I know might be better for you. Very much like Craig was saying, we operate similar, but I know of other coaching companies whereby they sell large contracts, and each fees are different based on the types of contracts and whatever, and then they take a cut, which is different than what AceUp does, which is we sell the things and then coaches, we contract coaches. So there's lots of different models. You got to be loose with this. So some of the downsides are coaching industry is changing rapidly. And so I don't know if there's a downside to that. Oh, wow, Modern Health pays $30 US. Yeah, we pay minimum $150 an hour. I'll just put that out there. We go up from there. So I know we're at the high end of pay. I don't know where Sounding Board is. But pay isn't everything. I mean, really think about the type of coaches that you're working with, the type of direction you want to go. And I'm happy to talk to people one-on-one. I'll put my email in chat and just reach out to me. I'm committed to this group. Craig, what would you add?
Thanks, Jim.
A couple of things, really. I think the risk is that platforms are, in effect, commoditizing coaching a little bit. And when platforms start to price coaching in a way or in alignment with personal training or having a haircut, that's where I start to get uncomfortable. So exactly like you were saying, James, our pricing starts at $150 an hour and runs through to around $300, depending on the level of leader that we're working with. I think the other thing to be aware of is that the typical engagement that the platforms offer looks different. Some platforms, the coach might come to you for one session and that's it, you're out. Others, with us, we have our standard engagement is 7 months and 12 sessions. What that typically looks like is a fortnightly cadence, but we built in a little bit of capacity to allow for sort of holidays and travel times or sickness. So the good news is at Sounding Board, once you get assigned someone, as long as the first session is meets satisfactorily on both sides, you know you've got a steady stream of income for the next 6 months. So I think that's just something to pay attention to. I'm always aware of the fact that depending on the platform, again, some have a tighter definition of the style of coaching they want you to deliver, which may mean a bit more of a stretch away from where you naturally reside. So there might be some compromise there. And I mean, back to your point, James, I think that the thing here is it's got to be about fit. If you get the wrong fit, it can be really painful because then you're not getting matched with the right coaches. The coaches you are being matched with, you don't enjoy. It feels like you lose a lot of the excitement that is so rich in coaching. So I guess the suggestion here is make sure you do your homework. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It's as much us interviewing you as it is you interviewing us, and it needs to be a fit both ways.
Thanks, Craig. And I see this question, this clarification question around the 150 an hour. That is what you pay the coach. Is that correct?
That's what we pay the coach. So what we bill is significantly above that. I mean, just one other thing I would mention, maybe a bit more on the specifics. You will be expected, certainly at Sounding Board, to have an entity if you're in the US to contract with us. We don't contract with individuals, and there are insurance requirements that we need our coaches to have a valid insurance. So there are certain costs associated for us with being on our platform. I'm not sure that it's the same elsewhere, but it's just a consideration to be aware of.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, as far as I know, I don't think we require those things. We just want great coaches, and we've got insurance and legal that covers. I mean, you have to sign agreements, and these are the things that you have to watch for. The other things to keep in mind are because we have a focus on coaching cultures and systemic coaching, group coaching is included in all of our engagements. I mean, similar to what Craig was saying, you know, we don't do anything less than 6 months, but we do more like 9 or 12 months to begin with, and a lot of these are ongoing, but we privilege real leadership development, coaching culture development. So we socialize the one-on-one coaching in group coaching, and we approach the entire organization leveraging the one-on-one coaching for the benefit of everything. You know, so look around. I mean, there's reasons not to be with AceUp. I mean, trust me, you work for any company, there's things that rub you the wrong way. But there's great stuff. So, and to Craig's point, I wouldn't spread yourself so thin either. Every company's got their own platforms and things that you've got to figure out. And again, reach out to me. Happy to have a conversation with you and point you in directions that might be best for you.
Awesome. Yeah, and there's still some more curiosity about the distinction between how much the coach is getting paid and how much the client is getting billed. I imagine you guys might not be at liberty to share those details, but I'd be curious too. Could you give us a sense of it? Is it like the client is billed probably twice as much, or are we talking 3 times, 4 times as much generally, or do you have a sense of that? Do either of you have a sense of that? Oh, we lost 2 of our panelists, just you and me, Jim.
Oh my God, how'd that happen? Yeah, so I mean, the easy question about that is these are platforms, okay? So these are technology companies. So it's not just delivering coaching, it's also delivering the analytics, it's the servers, it's the technology that goes behind it. And any technology startup has to there's certain parameters as you go through startup when you get angel investing, seed, Series A, Series B. There's certain margins depending on the type of company that you need to have. So coaching, and this speaks to what Craig was saying, coaching in a lot of ways commodified in this because we're not innovating coaching. And so in this sense, they just expect you to be a great coach. So now you're just like a mineral being pulled from the earth, you know, and it's commodified. It's just an expense. It's a fixed expense. I mean, I'm making it sound more business and crass than it is. We do, we're a human-based industry, so we do privilege that. But from a business perspective, what we charge clients isn't by coaching session, isn't by coach, isn't by, there's a number of different factors that have to factor in to make something scalable, affordable. Yeah.
Yep. Welcome back, Craig.
Yeah, welcome back. I don't know what you would add to that. In other words, I'm not going to tell you.
I know. Well, I prefaced it by saying I doubt you guys are at liberty to share. But if you want to give a sense, so James gave us a very diplomatic answer, which did help us understand why it's a complicated question. But if you want to add anything, Craig, around
just as a very broad rule, I would make up that the platforms charge double what the coach gets. In our case, because we get a fair split of that income, and I think that 50-50 is pretty fair given the amount of overheads that they're running. I suspect that in certain situations, sorry, Gary, but at BetterUp, the split's probably more in favor of BetterUp than it is the coach. So there are definitely variations in that split. But I think one of the main things to know is the days where executive coaches could go in and charge thousands upon thousands of dollars for hour sessions, in my view, are gone. You can get very high quality coaching now at a much more reasonable price, partly due to the significant number of more coaches that there are available who have fantastic skill sets. So I think we do need to kind of consider our pricing. I think the one sort of domain where maybe that's less true remains team coaching, which is one of the biggest growth areas in coaching at the moment. And certainly in those spaces, I think the hourly rates are still significantly higher.
So here's the one area where I think I may respectfully disagree with Craig. Yes, in some ways you can say coaching prices are being driven down, but on the other hand, I saw Mark Shull's comment there. I went through IPEC and, there was concern like anybody can put out their shingle and be a coach. You don't have to be licensed, whatever. But the fact is branding still makes a difference. Who you are, what your credibility is, still makes a difference. I mean, I can still command a lot for my coaching outside of these platforms. And that is, that has nothing to do with whether you're certified, with, whatever. And in terms of, the market, there's always a market for outstanding coaches, or those who are perceived as outstanding, okay, because perception becomes substance. And I see a lot of coaches that are still, I think, will continue to make a lot of money. On the other hand, I think what's beneficial about the platforms is it can give you a steady base from which to do that. That's my thoughts.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into how these folks who might be interested can get on these platforms, and especially Craig, the manager of recruitment. I imagine you might have some tips of the trade.
Yeah, so I guess like platforms, the recruitment process that each follows is probably as bespoke as the platform itself. I can speak to ours. We have a very rigorous vetting process. I would say maybe 30 to 40% of those who apply are successful, if that. The first step is normally a fairly lengthy application in our case. We want people to commit the time. We want them to share their thinking around coaching as much as their approach. We ask for a recording of a segment of a coaching call. That's the way that we assess the coach's natural style to see whether it's close enough to where we sort of hang out or not. And then the final step in our recruitment process is a group activity with 3 specific activities embedded within it. It's very intensive. However, everyone always says it's great fun as well. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to get feedback on your coaching. And from those, we then decide who we want to move forward and hire, and those that we're not going to progress further. That's the beginning of the story. I think the other thing I would say is, as anyone who's ever had any experience of sales knows, sales cycles aren't straightforward. It doesn't always go as we like. So it's a bit of an imprecise science trying to match that sort of supply with demand in a way that keeps both the coaches happy and keeps the clients happy. So there can sometimes be some wait times between when you get through the process to when you're onboarded. So just to be completely transparent about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and with that in mind too, James, quickly, I'll just add that you might want to apply more than once. So I am someone who was rejected the first time, and then I applied again and I got it. So I think because of the supply and demand, many of these platforms allow you to give it another shot. And so I did, and I was successful in that.
Yeah, I just building on what Craig and Will said. First of all, thank you, Craig, for telling people supply and demand. So if we don't have the demand, and there's various times where more coaching comes on board and others don't. So just be patient. Again, don't tax the administrators, because they will kick you off the platform because there's another coach that wants your seat. But what I would say too is, we have a strong vetting process as well. 14%, we only accept 14% of our coaches. What I would say is we do a lot of we tend to privilege people with a real solid, at least 5 years corporate background, at least 5 years coaching background, ICF certification, PCC, once in a while ACC, but the initial thing we look at is, does your LinkedIn look good? Because that's where our clients go first when they look at a coach. We provide them profiles and stuff, but make sure you've got a good LinkedIn profile that makes you look like a solid coach. We demand testimonials that are named by the person, their position, their company in the areas that we're looking that we'll put on the platform. So you have to have clients that will provide testimonial, not anonymously, for you to. So we privilege results. We privilege your corporate background, and then through your LinkedIn, and then we have an information form that you fill out, and then we have and then we want to know that you're a collaborator and are gonna work. We don't necessarily have a method again per se. So we're looking for outstanding coaches that are willing to collaborate and with other coaches and collaborate with us in a real abundance spirit. And to Will's point, apply now, even if you don't have your ACC. I mean, I know, my coaching impact team hates me for this, but I'm like, apply and put my name in there and then reach out to me, let me know. So they always reach out to me. And I can say, look, I think that, they've got potential. They don't have their ACC, but I know them from a great group. They're getting great support. And it's up to them whether they hire you or not. But I will promote you as much as possible and then keep applying, really.
Awesome. Great tips, guys. Thank you. The final piece was to offer some tips to keep in mind when working with these platforms. I feel like we've been sort of doing that throughout. If there's anything in there that you want to add, now's a great time. But otherwise, I think we should go through the chat, see if there's some questions we missed, and also offer participants to add in new questions.
Hi, this is Harry. I have a question.
All right.
This is really excellent. And the conference planners, I hope you'll pay attention and include something like this at the conference. I want to tease Will a little because BetterUp hired Prince Harry, who is actually being coached at BetterUp and is writing about it. And he's a chief mood officer or something, I don't remember. So that's really an excellent thing about coaching, or a spokesperson. What I wanted to tell you, if you don't know it, Modern Health has started a new kind of coaching that is, I have a client who's going through this now. It's called mental health coaching, and it's between coaching and therapy. And he has to go through a training to get certified to do this. And I think it's a whole new niche. What do you think about that?
Jay, okay, I thought he was about to speak.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting. Yeah, I think it's exciting. I was aware of that new modality that Modern Health is offering, and it makes sense. It makes sense that that's one of the directions we're moving in, right? With all the telehealth stuff happening and coaching already being online, it seems like it makes sense that they'd be merging in this way.
Yeah, what I would say is that, I mean, the coaching industry is changing rapidly. And so there's lots of great innovation, and that's another one. You know, look around. I mean, really, I'm going to, somebody wants to work with me on putting together a chart. I think Garry is right. We need to come up with a chart. We can do that for ourselves. I want to follow up, kind of linking that question with what Matt was put in there about styles of coaching. I mean, we don't really put on our website any particular style of coaching. Different coaching companies have different styles, etc. What I like is what I heard David Peterson, again, former head of coaching from Google. He said that when he was interviewing coaches for Google, he would ask them, "What is your methodology?" And when they would say, "Well, you know, it depends," he's like, he rolls his eyes, you know, he's like looking for methodology. But then he realized when he was on calls where he was trying to get a coaching engagement, he would say the same thing. Because when you're a really good coach, it kind of does depend. And that's what we're trying to make that balance. I like to say that don't take this the wrong way, but at AceUp, we have diva coaches. Like, we have coaches that are really focused on results. And in some sense, that's what we want our clients to have. So we don't want to give them a method. We don't have a particular style. So we're looking for coaches that are results focused, but are willing to collaborate with others. And so we don't really privilege any particular style, except that one is emerging organically. And those styles are all going to change as well. I mean, I think Craig can speak to this. Even is that when you bring on coaches, you begin to influence the company as well, particularly at this stage. So do your research.
It's a good,
like Craig said.
It's a good point, James, because I think whilst the majority of our coaches have, let's say, a more traditional corporate background, nearly all of them haven't been in one place for 25 years. They've had different career experiences, and that can include, we've got a person who works with us who's incredible with tech, but also trained as a cabinet maker. We've got someone who won an Oscar as an opera singer. We've got another person who was a professional equestrian at the age of 17, teaching other coaches. So I think sometimes don't downplay your difference, because that's also an advantage. We don't want identikit coaches at all. We want coaches that are as diverse as the coaches that we serve. And I think that can be your superpower. Don't be ashamed of who you are. If the platform isn't a fit for you, it doesn't mean another won't be. It's about finding the right one.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. You can even be an excommunicated British royal.
That's right.
I don't know if there's any of those on this call.
Just in case. Yeah. So with corporate background, I have a nonprofit background, but it didn't deny me from the opportunity. Matt, Daniel, I see your hand raised. Did you get your question answered, or do you have some more?
Yeah, you know, I'm really concerned by this idea that one would join a platform and be told how to coach. And I'm really concerned that I hear a lot of you an expectation that people are ICF accredited. ICF is only one of the ways of coaching. I'm not ICF accredited. I looked at ICF accreditation. ICF accreditation is coaching by numbers. It tells you how to coach. It tells you a list of skills that you have to display and a list of criteria that you need to meet. Now, I understand that some people will want to play that game in order to get the accreditation, because, you know, some that is required, and I gather an awful lot in the States. But ICF accreditation, it's coaching by numbers. Yeah. Put numbers here, join 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. That is my impression of ICF accreditation. Yeah. So, I mean, the point about how you accredit coaching or how you ensure that somebody's a good coach, people need to be well trained. Being accredited is one way that can happen. People can also be well trained. People can be assessed in different way, and the way that you ensure quality for me would be supervision. And I know that we can argue about the role of coaching accreditation body. ICF is only one coaching accreditation body. Yeah, there's also Association for Coaching and EMCC, and they have different accreditation, and Apex in the UK. So, there's 4 different ones that I know of. So the fact that ICF accreditation is required to join this platform, that troubles me a little bit, because it suggests that those of you that sits on those platforms are really limiting the kind of people that you're likely to recruit, because you won't get me, because I'm not going to be interested in working somebody who's involved, who requires ICF accreditation. But the idea that a beginner coach should go and follow somebody else's model, I mean, to me, that's just abhorrent. That isn't what coaching is.
Well, yeah, thank you, Matt. Let's speak to that.
I just want to say that. Sorry, go for it, James.
Go ahead, Craig. Go for it.
I was just going to say that what we ask for people to have followed an ICF approved training program. We don't require them to have an ICF accreditation or an ongoing membership to the ICF. What we're trying to do is establish that the program of study that they've followed is at least 125 hours and has been verified as having sufficient sort of merit. So just a clarification around that from our side.
And I really totally resonate with what you're saying there about great coaching doesn't need to be ICF. But if you think about what these platforms are doing, who is our client? Our client are companies, and certification is a shorthand for the companies. So companies are requiring, and they want these certifications. It's a shorthand for them to know. So all the coaches that I supervise, we have to adhere to the ICF ethics guidelines. And so you can imagine, I mean, as coaching expands, there's also opportunities for complaints about coaching. So as complaints come in, and I've gotten into situations where I'm supervising a he said, she said, but a coach can't divulge what's happening. So if somebody says this coach was, abusive in this situation, but the coach says no, the coach can't disclose. So what we do is we say, look, everyone has agreed they are bound by ICF ethics guidelines. They're bound, and that's how we have to do it. There are many ethics guidelines. There's but we have to. You have to think about the client is not the coach. The client is the corporation. And there's certain things that we have to do in order to assure that the client is getting what they need. And for better or for worse, I'm with you. I know great coaches who have not gone through an ICF program. We just can't use them in our platform, but there's others. Yeah.
And to speak to the coaching format, I think it depends on the platform. I think there's some that want a more specific approach to coaching. BetterUp, for example, has some models that they suggest for like your first session and your last session. Everything else is to be determined and to be, approached by the particular coach. And we aren't monitored, right? The coaching sessions aren't recorded and then assessed, and then we're given a naughty finger if we did something that wasn't the model that they like. So there is a lot of flexibility from my experience with the way that you approach your coaching. We might have,
and maybe just one point. Oh, sorry.
Go for it.
I was just going to add one point. The sort of the style, if you like, of our coaching, it's based around principles. They're not rules. They're open to interpretation. There are as many different interpretations of those principles as there are coaches on our platform. But actually, through the conversations that we have, that's how, to your point, James, you start to build that common language, that way of thinking about it, the choice around the different options available.
Beautiful. I think now is about the time to send it over back to Matthew, and we'll close out. Thank you, James and Craig, so much. I know as someone who's been coaching on platforms, I learned a lot, and I hope that the participants learned a lot as well. So thank you all. This was exciting.
Thank you all. Great conversation. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, all
Good-
three of
thank you,
you.
Garry.
Thanks for the opportunity.
And to Garry. So everyone, thank you everyone for coming. There were some amazing things there that I think we could all go through. I don't know about you lot, but I'm going to be looking into a few of these platforms myself. I have started a Facebook group. I don't know if a Facebook post on the Gay Coaches Alliance group, and we'd love you to put any coaching platforms and any background on them, so who their clients are, what they require from you, and especially for people like Matt who are not ICF accredited, we'd like a broad range of those platforms on there, so please stick them in there. And as I said in the chat, if you're trying to join the group, if you're not a member already, please do fill in the questions. We get the odd stranger who's just seen the word gay and tries to join, and we just don't allow them. So if we don't recognize your name, then you won't be allowed in. That's that. Has anyone got any last words before we start signing off? No. Okay, in which case I will say thank you to everyone for coming. The next GCA Thursday call is the second Thursday in March, so that will be the 10th of March, being as we have 4 weeks in February. Same time, which is that 4 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. UK. Look forward to seeing everyone there. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.
Everybody.
Bye all.
Thank you all.
Brilliant.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye all.